It's great to live in a world where we are free to pursue what will make us happy. But we also need spaces in our lives where we're freed from the pursuit of what will make us happy. Deserts in the oasis of our lives where we're able to breathe and be free from that frenetic pursuit of something that will make us whole and complete. In life, there are the religions of hedonism and there are the religions of nihilism. In the religions of hedonism, they promise the sacred object. They can give us the thing that will work in this life or in the next. And in religions of nihilism, they can shut off our desire so that we no longer want the sacred thing. Well, what I've been talking about today is the idea of a religion of the absurd. Now, the absurd literally means the bringing together of two incompatible realms. So when I talked about Freud and the pleasure principle and the reality principle, that is the clash of two incommensurable worlds that creates something productive. My own work is an example of this. When I'm trying to describe what pyrotheology is, I always feel that I'm failing. Every time I create videos like this, I go away thinking that I didn't quite nail it. The failure generates my desire to create more. And the failure is actually what is creating the description of the very thing I'm trying to capture. And that failure is enjoyable. I enjoy the constant failure. It is productive, it is energizing, and it gives me meaning. This is an experience of a productive maladaptation. This is captured in an old Jewish parable that tells a story of this young guy who visits this old rabbi and says, "Rabbi, Rabbi, teach me the wisdom of God." Now the rabbi looks at this young kid and says, "You're too young. Come back to me in 10 years. But the kid says, "No, test me. I've studied philosophy. I know symbolic logic. I know Aristotelian logic. I'm ready for what you can teach me." And so the rabbi says, "Okay, I'll test you. I'll ask you a question and see how you do. Two guys come down a chimney, and at the bottom, one has soot on their face and one doesn't. Tell me, who washes their face?" Well, the young guy thinks for a second and then says, "Oh, the person with the soot on their face." The rabbi looks at him and says, "Really? No, of course not. It's the person without the soot on their face." Why? Because they look at their friend. They see that their friend has soot on their face, so they assume that they must have soot on their face, and so they wash their face. Well, the young guy goes, "Oh yeah, of course, all right, okay, sorry, but test me again, please." And so the rabbi goes, "Okay, here's a question for you. Two guys come down a chimney, and at the bottom, one has soot on their face and one doesn't. Tell me, who washes their face?" Well, the young guy thinks for a second and then says, "Oh, well, the guy without the soot on their face." And the rabbi says, No, don't try to be smart. It's the guy with the soot on his face. He feels it in his eyes, he tastes it in his mouth. Are you stupid? And the young guy is confused, says, "Test me one more time." And the rabbi says, "Okay, a different question. Two guys come down a chimney, and at the bottom, one has soot in their face and one doesn't. Who washes their face?" The young guy's confused at this point and says, "My first answer maybe for different reasons." And the rabbi stops him and says, "No, they both wash their face. How can you not come down a chimney and not think you have soot on your face? Go away and come back in 10 years. Now, one of the things about this parable is the way that the young person is trying to nail down an answer. And the rabbi was saying that, no, you don't enter religion when you have the answer. No, if you've got the answer, stay away. You're entering into a conversation that has been going on for thousands of years before you were born, and a conversation that will be going on for thousands of years after you die. And there's no end to it. And until you're ready to enter into that struggle and enter into that conversation and be enlivened by it, well, then you're not ready. There's another Jewish parable that captures this as well, about two rabbis arguing about a passage in the Torah. And they've been arguing about it for 15 years and they can't find agreement. Eventually, God gets so impatient that God parts the clouds, goes down to the two rabbis and says, "I've been listening to you guys arguing for 15 years about this. I'll tell you what it means." And in a rare moment of unity, the two rabbis turn to God and say, what right have you to come down here and tell us what it means? You clear off back to heaven and let us argue about it. And the idea here is that in the Torah, you can't reduce it to a single answer. It's saturated with meaning, and you are part of it, and you're part of the tradition if you're engaged with a passionate discussion about it, if your heart is in it, if it is transformative to you. We are often like people going into an art gallery and thinking that we understand the art if we have the right interpretation, not knowing that great art cannot be reduced to a single interpretation. And your love of the art is evidenced in you returning to it, in you engaging with it, and finding yourself transformed and interpreted by it. There's a story from Ireland that I think captures some of this. It's a story of a Texan whose great-great-grandfather came from Ireland, and he wants to go back to retrace his roots. So eventually, he takes a plane, lands in Galway, finds some relatives, goes to the house and knocks on the door. Well, this old guy opens the door called Seamus. Seamus welcomes the Texan in and they have a cup of tea together. After they've had a cup of tea, the Texan says, well, will you show me around your farm? Seamus says, absolutely. Brings him out the back and says, you see all of this? He says, it's all mine. You see that tractor over there, right to here, that's mine. Oh, and that tree stump to here, it's mine. Oh, and that little fence to here, that's all mine. Well, the Texan laughs. He says, back home, he says, I can get in my car, I could drive all day north, I wouldn't get to the end of my land. He says, I could drive all day south, all day east, all day west, I wouldn't get to the end of my property. Seamus looks at him and says, he says, I know how you feel. I used to have a car like that as well. Now that is the spirit that I've been exploring. The Texan is playing this game, that he has all of this stuff. But Seamus knows that we all have broken cars. He doesn't see someone with the sacred object, he just sees someone like him. We all have struggles and we all have difficulties. We can't flee them. The more we try to flee them, the more damage they do in our lives. We have to find a way to embrace them, to make room for them in our lives. And with that, I want to finish with a benediction. It's a benediction written by an Irish poet called Pádraig Ó Tuama. It's based on the benediction that you get at the end of Mass, which is called Go in Peace. Pádraig wrote this for a community that I was part of, and it's called Go in Pieces. And so, my friends, the task is ended. Go in pieces. Our faith has been rear-ended, certainty amended, and something might be mended that we didn't know was torn. And we are fire. Bright, burning fire, turning from the higher places from which we fell, emptying into the hell in which we'll find our loving and beloved mother, brother, sister, father, friend. And so, friends, the task is ended. Go in pieces to see and feel your world.